What up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Gym Report. I'm your host, Pablo, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Brian Schultz. Today, we're going to do a lot of discussion, but very quickly, though, because we want to get through a lot of things here, because I'm going to be stepping away for some time, not for a long time, but I want to keep the content rolling and sort of keep you guys up to date on what we're thinking about what's going on in the superhero genre, especially in Marvel, DC. But we're going to get into the Marvel Roundup. A lot of things are happening there. Kevin Feige, Fantastic Four struggling, Spider-Man behind the scenes, and what's going on there. Doomsday updates. There's a lot to discuss, but we're going to try to get through it quickly, but effectively. Right? Brian, Feige, more.
We left a little meat on the bone. Maybe, I don't know if it was totally by accident or not, but he has this weird, we've seen this before. He tries to find reasons sometimes for why things don't work and seems to come up with, shall we say, interesting answers. So as an example, he claims the Marvels didn't work because people thought there was too much homework involved with the supporting characters. I'll just let that sit there for a second. But he was asked, go ahead.
Captain Marvel made $1 billion, yo. You still had Monica Rambeau there. You had these. There wasn't a lot of homework to do, especially for the fans who have already done that homework. This just means that I'm telling you, man, this MCU fatigue is sounding a bit more plausible than superhero fatigue in general. I think it's Marvel and how, again, if you factor in the amount of fandom that your previous movies had, especially leading towards Endgame, then you got No Way Home. The Marvels just doesn't tickle my excitement, whatever juices and combustions and all any of that stuff happens to get you excited, that doesn't do it. The Marvels just doesn't do it.
Hold that thought about the excitement piece, because I think that is actually at the center and the fatigue. We'll get to the fatigue discussion in a different way, but what we held back, and I guess what some folks wanted us to talk about too, which is Brave New World. I used the palate cleanser of his rationale for the Marvels not working because he was asked about Brave New World not working. And he said very bluntly that in large part it was because Chris Evans was not in the movie. I mean, that's tough for Anthony Mackie any way you cut it. And you can choose to read whatever layers you want into a comment like that because Kevin Feige left himself open for you to do that.
Shout outs to Tracy4994 for, we had a interesting discussion about that. And the discussion was, how does Mackie feel about this? What is he thinking? He's most likely done after this.
You also see in Brave New World, Harrison Ford's Thunderbolt Ross is asking Sam Wilson to lead and reconstitute the Avengers. And then we get told between when that movie drops and Doomsday gearing up that, in fact, Pedro Pascal's Reed Richards is now going to be the leader of the Avengers. So basically, the studio fired Falcon after the box office performance of Brave New World. But
I wasn't even thinking that, man.
Hold that thought, because Fantastic Four's box office ain't looking so pretty right this second. The common denominator to me when I hear this stuff is you are scapegoating and burying the lead. The movies suck. How about that as a reason why it didn't do well?
Exactly.
The Marvels is a terrible watch.
I mean, let's be real.
I have zero interest in watching a single frame of that movie ever again in life. Brave New World, there's a couple of maybe things if it was on TV and I had nothing else to watch that I would probably pop in for a sequence or two because they're not the worst. But these are not good movies. Let me contrast that. Remember Chris Hemsworth's assessment of Love and Thunder? You didn't hear him say, he wasn't putting people under the bus. he took the ownership of it. He said, I messed up with the tone of the character. He's like, I took the wrong message from Ragnarok. We leaned into that, and it was the wrong way to go. Like, we messed up. That's the correct assessment of the film. Like, for Feige to lay this effectively at Anthony Mackie's feet, after Mackie's given him, what, a decade plus of really solid work as Sam Wilson? I mean, that feels like a knife in the back to me. It's just, if we made a list of the things that's wrong with the movie, where would you have Anthony Mackie on that list? Is he in the top 5 of things that are, like, wrong with that movie?
No. Antagonist, the story's horrible. It has nothing to do with Mackie, yo. It's how they treated his character and developed his character. There's the problem.
Which is a writer's
Not
problem. That's a
yeah,
writing
man.
problem. That's not an acting
That's
problem.
not a Mackie problem. He did what Henry Cavill did for Man of Steel. He showed up and worked.
Yeah, I would say, like, you're right. I think that the way they reshaped Sam into the new role doesn't suit some of the things that Mackie's great at and was great at as Falcon, right? They actually are almost making him act a little bit more like Steve, and that's a mistake. Like, you should, but that's, again, that's a storytelling, that's a writer's room error. And then he's being told, like, well, this is your part now. Okay. Like, but the idea that people saw Anthony Mackie on top of this film's name and said no thanks, or didn't see Chris Evans' name and automatically said no thanks. There's a few people for whom maybe that is true, but Captain America 3 also made $1 billion. You don't get from 1.1 billion, and granted, in this climate, nobody's making $1.1 billion. I get it. So let's adjust it. Let's say 800 million without China, without Asia. Say 800 million. You still go from 800 to 400. 800 to 400 is not on Anthony Mackie. I'm sorry. If that's what Disney's running with, they got the wrong people in the building analyzing what's happening here. Like, they made this movie 3 times because audiences told them it was terrible in press screening. And the end result is thoroughly mediocre and forgettable.
How do you put that on him, yo? That's crazy, yo. That's, as they say in the streets now, that's crazy work.
I mean, and that's also, like I said, it's a bad look, man. I don't know why, it's just, why do that? Why invite that kind of scrutiny? Why invite that kind of scrutiny?
It's there, but nobody want to talk about it because look how Blade is being treated.
We can extend that discussion. I mean, like, whatever we thought of Ironheart, that was a dump. We had the Eyes of, so we haven't done Eyes of Wakanda. We will do it. So you caught me off guard when you're like, oh, it dropped. And I was like, no, I have that in my calendar for August. I was correct. It was slated for August, and they just randomly pulled it forward and dumped it.
No respect, yo. No care. I had the same conversation. I don't know who I had the same conversation. Oh, shout outs to Melvin Taylor, writer and producer of Baldy short film. We had the same conversation, Brian. He was like, I was expecting this, and you guys just dumped it. I didn't even know it was out. I don't know. Throw Echo in the same boat, in the same bag, yo.
It's funny, like, we got this weird thing where, like, David Zaslav took all that heat, and some of it deservedly so, for like, what are you doing with all the certain type of projects over there from Batgirl on down? But then you look around at what Disney's doing, you're like, man, that looks awfully familiar and not so good.
The quality stuff, they keep it in house and unveil it and and dress it up real nice.
But all the stuff
to unveil it to you.
But all the stuff they're tossing out kind of has something in common.
Hey, I'm talking to somebody else.
And then you kind of look at that and you're like,
yeah, yo. It's one of those things that make you go,
Well, that's what brings up the P word, right? Because it's like, on the one hand, you claim you're all about that stuff, but then your actions and the way you treat these projects at an individual level and the way you promote them and the way you develop them, you kind of look at it and you're like, I mean,
I'm suspecting.
I mean, the only exception is Coogler, right? And the funny thing is, Eyes of Wakanda now is the first time that maybe they're doing him like that too.
That is why there have been talks with him about going to DC. I'm at this point right now where Ryan Coogler is can't wait to finish Black Panther 3 and be done with it and move on. Because you hear with the success of Sinners, he's not even thinking about a sequel because that's not what I did signed up to do. I signed up to do this movie, tell this story, and not make this whole thing where I'm obligated. Now I work for the IP and I'm not working out of my own creation. Nah. So him going to DC, I think, and him having a prominent role, Brian, and not just as a director, I think will sweeten.
Well, I think the thing that when you get into this discussion, to Marvel and Disney's credit, they gave him control of Black Panther in a way they didn't give other filmmakers control, and it paid off, right? It paid off in spades. I think Warner Brothers has won with him personally because of the way they bet on Sinners. That is not a movie on the surface that you should be committing a $90 to $100 million budget to, let alone putting the kind of promotion behind it that they did. So, and they also, let's not forget, he gets the rights back, right? They gave him the full rights to the property within 25 years, which is sort of on the unusual side today. So, yeah,
25th anniversary re-release.
So he is clearly going to pay that back in some way, right? That is clearly an investment by Warner Brothers in a future with Ryan Coogler. That's what they're betting on, and they bet correctly, right? He rewarded them, and now the doors are open. I mean, and quite honestly, he's now there, Christopher Nolan, right? I mean, they lose Nolan to Universal. This is the guy they're hoping is going to take that place, right? And so, yes, I think a DC film that is in-house, I'm sure that James Gunn is just burning up his phone or knocking on his door if he's in the office to be like, hey, what do you want to do here? And yes, I wouldn't be shocked if he does it. I kind of hope he does something non-IP Sinners was kind of non-IP and now they're trying to make it IP. I kind of hope he stays. I know he's got to do Black Panther. I'm sure there's contract stuff there and he wants to finish the Toussaint arc or whatever, but I kind of hope he stays away for a little bit, lets people want that, and then, kind of reemerges further down the road as opposed to going like, Marvel, DC, like just kind of living in the cycle. Point is, the take on Maggie's incorrect. Like, again, if the take is they were going to have to overcome something in any Captain America that did not have Chris Evans to start, fair. I'm not going to throw that to the side. I think we would say that's true for any of the original characters they had. And honestly, you could have said that about Wakanda Forever in a pretty emotional way, right? They were going to have to overcome the absence of Chadwick. But to then lay the movie's underperformance at the feet of the star as if that was like a $400 million issue worldwide, that is flagrant. Just manipulation of reality. It's okay to say you messed up. That's what I don't get. Like, it's okay to say that. Yeah,
Just don't blame it on you. Don't try to say, because with you saying this movie failed because it was too much homework, or this movie failed because Chris Evans, you just saying that the movie was dope, but it failed because of this.
Exactly.
That's impossible.
You're saying that Red Hulk was cool. You're saying that the decisions you made on New Falcon and stuff was cool. Like, it's the movie's like this hydra of like editing that you can kind of feel and see. Like Giancarlo Esposito, it's like you're trying to. It's what we said. It's you're trying to throw these name actors into this movie and saying, "Look who we got," and it's like you got nothing.
Fantastic Four.
Man, that thing is dropping like a stone. Yeah, might be clobbering time, but not in the right way.
I saw it for a third time, even though I was up for the dope parts, but I was falling asleep. But I saw it in the theaters, and I'm like, yo, I don't know how this movie, people think, again, MCU fatigue. Yo, it's not superhero fatigue, it's MCU fatigue.
Let's talk about that, because I will ride for this movie on its own, and no one's going to change my mind on that, because I like it. I enjoy it. My kid loved it. I had a good time. We all had a good time. And the scores continue to say the people who saw it enjoyed it.
Boom, 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 boom.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
So let's talk about what might be happening here on a couple of levels. It's starting to feel like maybe Marvel overcorrected on the no homework thing. That's number one. So this goes to your point about the Doom scene. Right now, we've had a discussion about why that didn't land from an impact perspective. But I think there's another piece of it not landing. So Marvel really went out of its way to tell you this was a movie you could just watch standalone. You didn't have to see anything else, right? That was everywhere. No homework, no homework. And they're clearly going to try to do that for a while. But the way this box office has fallen off to where like now you're looking at maybe 500 to 600 million as the final gross, when the opening weekend they were talking 700, 750. It's pretty big. I think there's a case to be made that people will not accept Marvel unless there is something propulsive. They don't want a standalone Marvel movie. So the audience is saying, I don't want to have to watch 27 things beforehand, but they're saying, I want to walk out of the theater feeling like I have to see the next project.
What happens next?
And I think Marvel might have missed that boat because it's interesting because I feel like, to your point, like that scene not hitting, I think what people are seeing through is I think there's definitely some people who are aware of Marvel course correcting Kang to Doom this late in the game and are kind of like, I don't care enough because you haven't set up the narrative. I know what you're really doing. You're just grabbing at this because of the major situation and because of the, like, I do think there's a piece of the audience that's saying that. And I think there's another piece of the audience to where it's like too new. Like this goes back to my whole Nick Fury and the Avengers and Iron Man 1. It's like, it's easy for us to say, looking back, oh, that hooked everyone about where this was going. No, it didn't. It hooked the fans. That took a long time, right? It took scene after scene after scene. Even when Thanos turns to the camera, the fan world knew what that was, were losing their minds. It's a bigger audience that saw that, right? So
it sparked the
so my
conversation.
point is, it didn't happen in one scene. It took scene after scene after scene, and each time you're like, oh, there's Thor's hammer in the desert. Like, oh, there's
there's the magic
and so
of it.
this feels much more like almost a jarring, like out of nowhere. Like if you're not following the MCU and you go see this movie, I thought about it like that scene to you is like, what?
Who the hell is that?
You know what I mean? Like if you don't know anything, in a way that weirdly, even if you didn't get the Avengers reference in Iron Man 1, you know who Samuel L. Jackson is. So you see him with an eye patch and you're like, well, that's cool. What's Samuel L. Jackson doing at the end of this movie? And then you kind of investigate. You're like, oh, he's Nick Fury. That's I'm trying to think about this on the standpoint of people who don't know the IP, right?
If people don't know the IP, here's the thing. If people don't know the IP, the conversation that happens after scenes like that sparks conversations, right? People get interested. And people then do their own due diligence if they want to find out more. But it still sparks conversations. That's why, listen, if you go some of these YouTube channels, they have millions of subscribers because people want to know, right? People want to have that conversation. I had a conversation with Mel a few days ago, and he had a brilliant uh, scene with the what was those satellites or those things that they were using to sort of then transport the Earth to another galaxy or
Oh
whatever.
yeah. Those things they set up around the world that Silver Surfer destroyed. Yeah.
He said, "What if all of them lit up except Latveria? If
Oh,
they
that's
had one
interesting.
there, if they would have said something, they didn't do enough, Brian." From that to seeing Doom it's just
But there's not enough time here. That's the other thing, right? There's not enough time.
yes, not enough time, but again, it's all in the way you do it. All in the way you do it. That little scene that Melvin mentioned would have been a perfect thing. And also the other Doom aesthetics that I've mentioned in other shows that they would have tried. At least it sparks the conversation. Because somebody who's watching that, let's say me, who knows a bit of the lore, and someone who doesn't, and they're gonna ask me, why is he what's that fly? What was who's that? What is he thinking about? Oh, that's sparks a conversation.
I think it's tricky.
But
Yeah, I think it's tricky though because I feel like some of the Latveria, the fly stuff, I get it. That is definitely more for the fans. You got to. Is that enough to hook a non-MCU person who's revisiting?
it's better than
Well,
what they
I
did
think the problem
right
is this
now.
is not making anyone happy what they did. And I think there's, like I said, I think too many people are seeing through what's really happening here heading toward Doomsday and Secret Wars. That's the real problem.
The conversation isn't about how great this movie is going to be. The conversation, like, how much is he getting paid? Who's going to be in? He's Doom. I thought he was Tony Stark. There's that conversation.
Yeah, I mean it's a different type of conversation, but I think the motivations and the results could be similar, which is this project has the look and feel of the Joss Whedon Justice League more by the day to me. Like a ham-handed, rushed ensemble that they're desperate to get out as a way to try to grab money. And as we saw with the Justice League project, like that failed miserably. That thing lost a ton of money. There's just no the point is there's just no propulsion here. You're counting on Downey. And yes, we should talk about our updated views of like now that we're seeing the box office struggles of Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four, both of which are pretty good pretty good to quite good Marvel movies. We got Avengers Doomsday ostensibly just over a year away. There's just no steam for this. Like it feels so hollow. And I think so many people, like, even though they see the names, are kind of like, wow, y'all are shameless. Like, that's kind of the attitude. And it's like, do you really want, I mean, they really do, but like, do you really want to waste an Avengers movie on Shameless? Like, on that? Like, that's what people feel about you. Then, I mean, I stand by what I said, which I think I stand by what I said. I think there's a real case and chance that Avengers Doomsday does not make $1 billion.
It seems unlikely. It seems unlikely.
I would love to know what the internal expectations were at different points along the way for money. Because I think we look back now, we're like, okay, Iron Man 1, huge swing, $500 million globally at the time for a superhero movie seemed like an enormous number. So that was, only really Dark Knight, which obviously did $1 billion with Heath Ledger's passing in part that same summer, was sort of, that was in the stratosphere. But you look at like first Avenger, I think made like 300 something million. It was not a lot. Like it was barely profitable. Thor 1 was barely profitable, right? These were not massive numbers, but they were generally considered well executed. People liked them. They gave them pretty good scores, so that when they did put them together on screen, all of a sudden you got the 1.6 billion. It became the event of the summer. By the time they got to Ultron, they were kind of in that weird area of like, they had some shaky movies, but then they had the turn, right? Because Winter Soldier and Guardians had happened, but it hadn't really like fully taken hold yet. So Ultron comes the next year and it's kind of a little uneven and it takes a step back. But then obviously we know what happened. By the time you get to Infinity War and Endgame, people are just like salivating. Like had they released those tickets like a year in advance, like they did with the Odyssey, people would have been buying those for like $1,000.
Yes.
So they've lost all of that, right? There's just no, like I said, we're not even like, we're talking about our next year, and it's kind of like Avengers Doomsday is kind of just there. It's like we're talking about He-Man and we're talking about the Odyssey, and actually we're going to talk about Spider-Man, which just might be quickly overtaking Avengers as a more interesting project. But like the Avengers is just kind of sitting there as like, yeah, I know it's there. I know it's a big deal, but I don't really care. And I kind of really just want to get past it. That there's that feeling.
Good segue. Spider-Man behind the scenes. They're just showing it to you. They don't care. Because what it will look like on screen will be different. And I think that has me sitting curious as to how this is going to look, because Destin Daniel Cretton, I think, is a very, very good director. Visually, he wants to sort of, from what I've heard and read, there's certain shots that he wants to hit that come straight out of the comic books. And again, James Gunn has started this sort of path where we gotta go and do something different and recreate, not necessarily recreate the images, but that feeling. And them attempting to do what they have been doing with Spider-Man and his abilities is very interesting. and I'm excited to see what this looks like on screen.
Yeah, the biggest risk to this project is they kind of Avengers it up, to be quite honest. I mean, I think from the beginning when we heard about this, the idea of, the homemade costume and going back to the origins, but now with him having the knowledge and the rest of the world not, how does that affect their relationships? And like, there's so much fertile ground here for a good Spider-Man movie. I think we got our answer as to why they did a publicity shot of the costume, whatever you think of the costume, because they really are going practical. I mean, I, I think that is Holland rigged on a couple of those shots, because that's not a big. If you guys want to find them YouTube or whatever, they're pretty open about these. Like, it's basically like a rig attached to like a military vehicle or a tank, and he's doing some very small scale swinging and posing and kind of stuff that is powered down, quite honestly, from Iron Spider and all these things he was able to do with the Stark tech. But it clearly is going to be very real, because there he is suspended right there. And that's historically, if you know the history of Spider-Man effects, that's not how they've done it. Even Sam Raimi back in the day used to use like a giant rig with a camera, no actor. And he would simulate the motion, but then they completely CGI'd the character in. And here is Tom Holland or his double in the actual costume executing the moves right there. So that's going to create a very different feel, which I think, to Pablo's point, could look very refreshing on screen, because you know that most of what you're going to see actually happened.
I'm also, as you were talking, thinking about the Hulk and how he's gonna look, the Punisher, how he's gonna be involved in all of this, and how much less of a violent character he will be in this. So I'm interested and curious to see what they do. Hopefully the Disneyfication doesn't extend that far, but hopefully is believable because of the characters that we know, and they execute that well. Well, I see.
I mean, obviously, Spider-Man and Punisher do share time in the comics. I mean, they are. I get it. Like, that's the trick. To your point is tone. You can't. Yeah, this movie's going to be PG-13, so there's things that John Bernthal's done in his TV show that you just can't do in a PG-13 movie. Can you cut that off and edit that in a way that it still seems just as impactful? I think it's also motivation. I think the obvious motivation would be Peter's too nice. Like, what is the thing that pushes him to where he needs to align himself or turn to Frank Castle's way of dealing with things to solve the problem? And then, as you said, I don't know if it's Mr. Negative who's going to solve our Savage Hulk problem, but like, I don't know. There's clearly going to be some hack in this movie, my guess is, to repurpose the Hulk the way that, well, hopefully closer to the way we want to see him. But anyway.
Any Doomsdays update, Brian?
So the only thing that just caught my attention was just we're getting these little tidbits about who's on set and who's not. So there was some buzz because Pedro Pascal was on set. He's already done. And so the shoot is less than halfway finished, but then people were like, I saw a thing about like, oh, he's already wrapped his scenes. Like, is he dying in the movie? Like, what's happening? And I'm like, I don't think you should read that much into it. I mean, they got to do these around actors' schedules too. But the point is, it doesn't sound like his part is gigantic, right? Which is what we heard. We heard is he's in the movie. He's supposedly the leader of the new Avengers, but he's not necessarily a lead character relative to Doomsday or relative to Downey or Hemsworth. There was an interesting quote just from James Marsden, who obviously is coming back to play Cyclops, and because it kind of was just waxing nostalgic about it. But I also feel like it spoke to a little bit of how I feel this movie is just sort of like a gobbledygook of objectives and reasons. And he sort of was like, quote, I was excited because you're part of something gigantic. And I've spent 20 years listening to people say, when are you coming back? When are you coming back? I'm dead. Well, maybe not. I'm going to have a tough time struggling to get into the costume if they waited a couple more years. So it's been a blast. It really has a nice little homecoming to a role that really put me on the map. It was the first real event project I was ever a part of, and a beloved character, this icon from the comics. So to step back into the role was pretty special, end quote. There's nothing wrong with what Marston said. The only thing that jumped out to me was like, you have this camp of people who is coming back to this movie kind of to like go down memory lane, have a few laughs, have a little fun with it. And then you have the people who are kind of going forward and they're kind of crossing over in time. And it's not that it can't work, but it just speaks to the huge lifting that this movie has to do, that it's all in this one project to like fix the past, set up the future, make us care about the present. And like, I'm just not buying it, and I don't think a lot of other people are too.
Let us know in the comment section below what you guys think. There's a lot going on Marvel right now and this transition this transitioning towards the reset? How ugly can this be?
Well, the movie I'm actually thinking of, the more we get into this, I keep thinking about Happy Gilmore 2. When I told you about that movie, where it's like that movie's not really a movie. It's kind of just like cameo, IG bit, YouTube clip for 2 hours. And it did become a talking point. Like it goes to number 1 on Netflix. But like, I don't know. I mean, I'll see. Like, it's forgettable to me. It's enjoyable, but it's hollow. I'll still live and remember the first one a lot more than the second one. And I'm just thinking like, okay, so if you give Marsden a moment, if you give Rebecca Romijn a moment, if you give all these OGs a moment to kind of put a bookend on these characters, I respect that.
Yeah.
But that's time on screen
Yeah.
that is probably not really servicing where you want to go. And so if that's what we're going to do for 3 hours, like, is that a movie? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that doesn't feel like an Avengers movie to me. That kind of feels like a reunion special. I don't know. Just
Yeah, let us know in the comment section below what you guys think of all of this that's happening in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
No Way Home is the example of this is a reunion, but it's a reunion with purpose. And these people aren't just getting a moment.
Yeah.
They're getting a reason to be here. And that's why the movie works.
And there's going to be Sony's not look. There's a possibility because of how different this movie is looking like it will be that this will outperform.
I think there's a chance.
Doomsday.
I would take that bet actually right now.
And Sony will not.
You do not want that.
Yo, Spider-Man lives.
You do not want to live in that world.
Yo.
You do not want to live in that world where Spider-Man where Brand New Day does like $1.4 billion and or $1.5 billion and like a Doomsday does like 1.2. You don't want to be in that world for what's next. You don't think it's like you think Kevin can't touch Miles Morales now? just you wait.
It'll be a wrap, yo. It'll be a wrap. But yeah, let us know in the comment section below what you guys think, and we'll hit that like and subscribe, share with your friends, have a conversation. Because they need to be had so that these people are listening, so that they can know that we have expectations. We'll see you next time on the Nerd Report.